view of the system, which isn't exactly accurate, because, again, you kind of get out what you put in. So what we had them do is make all symmetrical scenarios. So, for example, what happens if we get persistent 6% returns? How does that look for our 8X going forward? On the contrary, what happens if we get all 8% returns? How does that look for the 8X? So what that's going to hopefully do is provide, I think the goal of these risk assessments is really to inform the boards about, what's the range of potential experience that things that could happen might generate. So, we have the persistent sort of +1, -1. We have a couple of shocks. If you get a big bad year or a big good year, what does that do? And then we also did a couple demographics scenarios too that look at head counts and life expectancies. And again, the focus was on making sure that we were consistent. So this is mostly in the vein of a heads up, and if anyone had any concerns about these or suggestions that something else should be run, we're all ears. Just a reminder that I can't remember the exact cost, but there's a cost for each of these scenarios that we run. So we're trying to limit them to the most useful financial and demographic scenarios that could help the board kind of think about possible outcomes.
Questions? Okay, thanks for the update.
Yep.
Next item on the agenda is disability recommendation. We have a recommendation from the Medical Review Board for the disability with a 1-year renewal for Catherine Tracy. Do we have a motion?
I would move approval of the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? So with the 1-year renewal, it's been a while since we've had one of these. So will the medical, who keeps track of the clock?
Well, fortunately, we have Brianna on the call.
There we go.
So Brianna Howard is our person who manages the disability retirement program. Brianna, do you just want to give a brief overview of how you do that?
Yeah. So, and sorry, I'm on my phone, so my camera's not quite working. But I just keep track. So I just make a note to myself for folks who are due for an annual review. And I set a timeline for that, and then I send them the appropriate paperwork, and they go before the board again at that 1-year mark. And the board kind of expands their view to look at what this person's able to do at that point. So I'm the one who just keeps tabs on the time frame for that and sends the paperwork at the appropriate time.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to accept the Medical Review Board's recommendation, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. And now we're on to miscellaneous items.
Yeah, thanks. I kind of had a grab bag of small items and don't intend to sort of discuss everything in here, but I'll just sort of orient, and then I want to talk through the couple legislative items that are out there just to make sure folks are aware of them. Open meeting memo, just take a look at that at your convenience, kind of going over some of the changes that have come about. And you'll notice, on the agenda this month, we tried to, now that we're in this sort of more defined hybrid world all the time, we tried to reformat the agenda to make it look a little bit more intuitive as, the fact that we're doing hybrid meetings. So I really appreciate Justin and Bill working on that memo and getting that out in front of everybody. Also wanted to go over the board terms that we've started to do that during this meeting, the February meeting. Just remind everybody about the terms. And this year we will have a couple of terms come up. And I'm just pulling that one up. We'll have Sandra and Genevieve expiring this year. So what we'll plan to do is we run the elections in-house for this. And we typically start that process by bringing the rules to the board for approval, kind of the same thing we've used in the past. Plan to bring those in March and then execute the election process throughout the spring. It's been about the timeline we've used in the past. Also use this as an opportunity for us to just check, does this look right to everybody? Do we have anything wrong? It's a good gut check for all of us. Put some thoughts together for the May agenda, and that's, kind of want to use it to bring some vendors in, and so folks can actually meet in person. What we are looking to circle on is to have the VSTRS meeting May 8th from 1 to 4, so a little bit longer. That would be when we do the risk assessment, have Siegel come in to present that risk assessment to folks. Having Power come in for a review, for the quarterly review. And as I said before, we've got a fiduciary advisor RFP. So we would try and, whoever we land on, we would try and get them in as well. As I'm thinking about this, 3 hours is going to fill up quickly. But I also want to make time for folks just to talk to each other. I think that's one of the values of an in-person review. So that's the plan. We're going to march toward that unless I hear concerns from folks.
And you said that was May 8th?
The VSTRS one will be May 8th, 1 to 4 is what we're thinking. Our goal is to stack them, to have one on the 7th and then 2 on the 8th so that our vendors can kind of just do one overnight and make it efficient. If you're really bored and want to see how we analyze cost savings, I got an Act 114 savings report that we did. Kind of summarized it at the last meeting, but we wanted to really sharpen our pencils and set forth how we did the analysis to calculate what we announced as $5.8 billion in savings. When we actually did this work and sharpened our pencils, we realized the actuaries and us had we were a little off on one metric, and the savings actually are closer to $6 billion throughout the 2 amortization periods. So Mike and I were actually just in the Senate Appropriations Committee yesterday presenting this, kind of giving the high level overview. I think it's important for folks over there to remember all the work we did over those years. And I think there was interest in it. So it went really well. And one of my favorite parts about it was just as Mike sat down to, introduce himself and say he was there to talk about pensions, the door opened and Senator Kitchell popped in. I think the joke was made when someone says pensions 3 times, Senator Kitchell shows up. She just happened to be in the buildings, and it was a fun time for her, a really funny moment for her to walk in. But that's all there for your reading pleasure. And then I did want to just talk about 3 pieces of legislation that are out there. One is a potential extension of the Act 173 program, which was an emergency COVID-related program to allow retired teachers to come back to work. It does sound as if there will be a representative proposing that we extend that. In talking to the NEA and the School Boards Association, it does not seem that there's a lot of support for it. So, we'll see where it goes, but I'm anticipating that will come out and maybe not move. In the past few years, we've had 7, 5, and 3 members take advantage of it. So it has not been that impactful.
But what was that act number again?
It was Act 173 back in 2022. There is not yet a bill drafted that I'm aware of. I think there's a drafting request in, so I don't know what it'll be this year.
Thank you.
So that's out there. There's the Budget Adjustment Act is the annual act that sort of trues up the current year budget. it just passed the House, and there's a provision in it that's causing a little bit of concern. It's part of Act 114 made a change to what we call the waterfall provision. The waterfall is when at the end of the year, the state has just extra balances, basically money came in a little bit north of what we projected. There's a statute that directs it to a few different places. And in Act 114, what it did was it said 25% of that amount goes to the state pension fund, and 25% of that amount goes to the PAAA, the Post-Retirement Adjustment Allowance account in the teacher system. What that account does is pre-fund a future COLA enhancement, and that was part of the whole Act 114 negotiation. It's the only funding source for the PAAA and that potential future COLA enhancement. So in last year, there were actually substantial additional balances left over at the end of the year, and both the state pension fund and the teachers PAAA received $8.9 million. There's no guarantee of any funding in any year because the balances might not come in. So I say all that because there's a provision of this year's budget adjustment that sort of diverts, it kind of what we call notwithstands that language, and it diverts any balances to the next fiscal year to be used for other purposes. That kind of causes a concern because, this was a provision of Act 114, and with the PAAA not having any other funding source, it's not guaranteed to get funding in any year, but at least there's the possibility. And so this kind of takes away the possibility. So we, flagged it, folks, and I think we're working with the administration to see if there's a way on the Senate side that we can change that to not do a complete end run around that provision. Kind of that's a live issue right now, so I don't know where it's going to go. I think the Commissioner of Finance and Management will be testifying on that section today, later on. So we're in the middle of those discussions, and I just wanted to make you aware of it. Hopefully we'll have more next meeting on that.
I would assume Vermont NEA is aware of that also to lobby in favor.
Very much. So yeah, very, very much. I talked to Jeff yesterday.
Okay.
And then there's the whole, I guess, the whole education transformation thing. So what is the big, item on this year's agenda? And for that, we don't have an express role. I am starting to monitor one of their work team, their sprint teams, to make sure to basically wave our hands as the retirement systems and say, just as you're moving forward with this thing, or not. We don't really have a position on anything there. It's more as an information sharing measure. I'm always reminded of Beth's sort of analogy. You push on the balloon over here, the active workforce, it can have an impact over here on the retirement side. So I'm starting to participate in those and make sure that I articulate potential concerns as I might see them. Haven't yet, early stages. If you guys hear of anything, definitely I'm all ears. We want to make sure that everything has gone into eyes wide open with respect to retirement systems.
And Tim, I apologize if I missed it. I did want to mention on the waterfall provision, Gresham is testifying at 2:15 today in Senator Probst.
In Senator Probst, okay, good.
Excellent.
Yeah, and on that, I didn't get the sense that there was an intentional sort of from the administration to do anything to Act 114. It seemed more like maybe this was we're using that provision to do a normal budgetary thing if you have excess, but it might have been inadvertent. That's what we're trying to figure out right now. So I don't want to suggest there's anything wrong with what they did.
The bottom line is it was caught and it's in discussion. So that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Question on miscellaneous items. Well, excellent. Thank you for that info. Last item on the agenda, any other business to come before the board?
Nothing from the staff.
It's 10:44 and it says at 10:45 we have to adjourn.
I was just seeing that. I'm pretty impressed. Bill, nice job on the time estimating today.
Yeah, you can take the rest of the day off, Bill. I mean, you did an outstanding job with that one. Okay, do we have
Thank
do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Take care.